In a world where the wilderness feels like the last place untouched by surveillance, you'd think some moments would remain unseen, lost forever to the vast silence of nature. But that's no longer true, with body cams, GoPros, drones, and phones always recording. Even the most remote corners of the planet are now being documented, and sometimes they capture things never meant to be witnessed. Not peaceful hikes, not breathtaking views, but sudden, brutal encounters where nature turns without warning.
You say, uh-oh, not me. Hi.
For 13 summers, Timothy Treadwell lived on the very edge of civilization, deep in the wilds of Alaska, where grizzly bears roam freely and human rules mean nothing. He chose to live among them, giving them names, speaking to them as if they were companions, as if they understood him. It was October 2003. The season was changing. Bears were entering survival mode, leaner, hungrier, and far more aggressive. Most had already begun preparing for hibernation, but the ones that remained were unpredictable and desperate. By his side was Amy Huguenard, a physician assistant who had joined him despite her growing unease. She didn't belong there, not like him. She wanted to leave. She wanted to go home. But sometimes love keeps people in places they should have walked away from. They were supposed to return to California. Everything was planned. Flights were booked. But a small argument with an airline agent changed everything. Treadwell, frustrated and impulsive, made a decision that would cost them both their lives. He went back into the park. Just one more week, he said. One last chance to find a bear he hadn't seen yet. He believed he understood the wilderness. He believed he was safe. They set up camp near a salmon stream, a known feeding ground. But that year, the salmon were scarce, and the bears that lingered there weren't the ones he knew. In one of his final recordings, Treadwell captured a massive, gaunt grizzly on camera, restless, agitated, searching the water for anything it could find. It wasn't calm. It wasn't familiar. It was hungry. On October 5th, Treadwell made a routine satellite phone call to a friend in Malibu. His voice was normal. No fear, no urgency, just another day. It would be the last time anyone heard from him alive. The next day, a bush pilot arrived to pick them up. What he found immediately felt wrong. The campsite was destroyed, tents torn apart, supplies scattered, and nearby, a large grizzly bear remained, guarding the area. When park rangers arrived, the reality was far worse than anyone imagined. Close to the camp, they discovered what was left of Timothy Treadwell, his severed head, part of his spine, and an arm still wearing his watch. Amy's body was found partially buried under dirt and branches, hidden the way a bear stores food. The grizzly that had stayed near the site was shot. Another younger bear that later charged at rangers was also killed. Inside the first bear's stomach, investigators found human remains, fragments of both Treadwell and Amy. But the most haunting discovery wasn't what was found in the wilderness. It was what was left behind. A video camera. It hadn't captured the attack visually. The lens cap was still on, but the audio had been recording. 6 minutes. 6 minutes of pure terror. The recording begins with Treadwell's voice, panicked, shouting that he's being attacked. Amy can be heard in the background, screaming, pleading with him to play dead. For a brief moment, there's silence, as if it's over, but then the bear returns. The screams grow louder, more desperate, until finally, nothing, just silence. The entire ordeal happened so quickly there wasn't even time to remove the lens cap. Filmmaker Werner Herzog later listened to the audio while working on Grizzly Man. He chose never to release it. He described it as too disturbing, too personal, something the world was never meant to hear. Treadwell's story has always divided opinion. Some saw him as passionate, someone who truly loved animals. Others saw recklessness, a man who ignored every warning. Park officials had told him repeatedly, keep your distance, respect the boundaries, don't treat wild animals like friends. But he didn't listen. He believed he was different, that the bears accepted him. They didn't. Wildlife ecologist Tom Smith later summed it up in a single sentence. It was tragic, but it wasn't unpredictable. In the end, Timothy Treadwell became a victim of the very thing he misunderstood most, the wild itself. In 1959, 9 experienced hikers walked into the frozen silence of the Ural Mountains and never came back. They weren't amateurs. These were trained, disciplined young people, most of them engineering students, used to brutal expeditions, the kind of people who understood the cold, respected it, and knew how to survive it. They carried cameras with them, documenting the journey like any group of friends chasing adventure. And in those early photos, everything feels normal. Smiles, laughter, snow-covered slopes stretching endlessly behind them. Nothing feels wrong. Not yet, but something changed. When they didn't return on schedule, it didn't trigger immediate panic. Delays happen in places like that. Weather shifts, routes change, but as days turned into weeks, concern gave way to something heavier, something colder. A search party was finally sent into the mountains, and what they found didn't make sense. Their tent was still there, standing, intact, but it had been cut open from the inside, not unzipped, not damaged by wind or snow, slashed, as if something had terrified them so badly, so suddenly, they didn't even bother using the entrance. Inside, their belongings remained: boots, coats, food, everything they would have needed to survive the freezing night. All left behind, abandoned in seconds, and outside, the footprints. They led away from the tent, calm, orderly. Not the chaotic marks of people running for their lives, but something almost worse. Some of them barefoot, others in nothing but socks, walking out into temperatures that could kill in minutes, as if whatever they were escaping was more terrifying than the cold itself. The trail disappeared into the darkness. Then, the bodies started to appear. The first were found near the edge of a forest, gathered around the remains of a small fire that had long since died. Their hands were damaged, raw, torn, like they had clawed at tree bark trying to climb, trying to escape something, trying to survive. But it didn't stop there. Weeks later, more bodies were discovered deeper in the snow, hidden beneath layers of ice in a ravine. And this is where the story takes a turn that still doesn't sit right, even decades later. Some had simply frozen to death, but others didn't. Crushed ribs, fractured skulls, massive internal injuries, like they had been hit by something incredibly powerful. And yet, their skin showed almost no external damage, no signs of a struggle, no clear explanation. One of the women was found without her tongue, parts of her lips and eyes missing. And as if that wasn't enough, traces of radiation were later detected on some of their clothing. Think about that for a second. 9 people in the middle of nowhere, running barefoot into the snow, with injuries that don't match any clear cause, and evidence that raises more questions than answers. Naturally, theories began to spiral. An avalanche, a military test, hidden Soviet experiments involving parachute mines or unknown weapons. Some suggested infrasound, low-frequency waves that can trigger panic and irrational behavior. Others went further, something not entirely human, something watching from the dark. The Soviet investigation didn't solve it. Instead, it closed the case with a phrase so vague it only deepened the mystery: a compelling natural force. But what does that even mean? More than 60 years later, the Dyatlov Pass incident still refuses to let go. Every detail feels like a piece of a puzzle that doesn't quite fit. The torn tent, the silent footprints, the impossible injuries, the radiation. Even the final photographs taken by the hikers themselves feel eerie now. Frozen moments of people who had no idea they were about to step into something they couldn't understand and couldn't escape. And maybe that's what makes it so disturbing. Not just that they died, but that in their final moments, something out there made them choose the freezing darkness over the safety of their own shelter. And whatever it was enough.
A 2-year-old boy disappears from a shopping centre in Bootle, near Liverpool.
It was an ordinary afternoon, one of those quiet, forgettable moments that never feel important until something goes wrong. February 12th, 1993. A shopping centre in Bootle, Liverpool. People moving in and out of stores, background chatter blending into the hum of daily life. And somewhere in that normality, a 2-year-old boy named James walked beside his mother. Small steps, curious eyes, completely unaware that this would be the last normal moment of his life. Because not far away, 2 other children were watching, 10 years old, just 10. Robert Thompson and John Venables had spent the day drifting through the shopping center, stealing small things, sweets, batteries, a can of blue paint. It looked like nothing more than childish mischief, the kind people ignore, the kind that fades into the background. But something darker was already forming. They weren't just wandering, they were looking, and somehow, in a place full of people, full of noise and movement, they chose him. The CCTV cameras captured it, quietly, without warning. A small figure, led away by two older boys. No struggle, no sudden panic, just a child walking hand in hand with strangers, trusting in the simplest way a child can. It's almost unbearable to watch, not because it looks violent, but because it doesn't. It looks ordinary. That's what makes it so chilling. No one stopped them, not then. What followed wasn't quick. It wasn't hidden away in some distant, unseen place. It unfolded slowly, across open streets in daylight, as the city carried on around them. Within minutes, James was hurt, dropped, crying, frightened. Witnesses would later remember the sound of it, the way he cried, the way it didn't quite register something urgent, something dangerous. They kept walking, over 2 miles, through busy roads, past shops, across parks and quiet paths. People saw them, dozens reportedly. A small boy in distress being led by 2 older children. And each time there was an explanation, a lie, simple and believable enough to move on from. A lost brother, a child being helped. And so, the moment passed, again and again, until it was too late. By the time they reached the railway line near Walton, whatever innocence remained had already been stripped away. What happened there was not sudden. It was prolonged, deliberate, cruel, in a way that still feels impossible to process. The violence escalated beyond anything anyone could expect from children so young. Blows, objects, relentless harm that didn't stop, didn't hesitate. And then, the final act. They left him on the tracks. When his body was found 2 days later, the truth was even more disturbing. He had already died before the train ever reached him. The damage had already been done. But what haunted investigators, and later the world, was how much of it had been quietly documented along the way. The cameras had seen it. Not the violence itself, but everything leading up to it. The abduction, the walk, the moments where intervention could have changed everything. Frame by frame, the footage told a story no one had realized they were watching in real time. A normal afternoon slowly turning into something unthinkable. When Thompson and Venables were finally identified and arrested, the evidence left no doubt. The stolen paint, the forensic matches, the eyewitness accounts, it all pointed to the same horrifying conclusion. 2 children had carried out one of the most shocking crimes in modern history. And that's what makes this case linger. It wasn't hidden in darkness. It didn't happen in isolation. It happened in public, in front of people, in front of cameras. A moment that should have passed unnoticed. Captured forever instead, as a reminder of how quickly normal life can fracture, and how sometimes the most disturbing thing isn't what we see, but what we fail to stop. It was just after 1 a.m. on August 4th, 2019. Cusco had gone quiet, the streets empty, the air cool and still. Under the dim glow of streetlights, surveillance cameras captured a couple stepping out into the night. Maybeth Espinoz, 34, and her partner, Hector Vidal, 36. They had just left a nightclub near the Bethlehem Bridge, walking close together, laughing, relaxed. For once, they weren't working. No mountains, no risk, just a normal night. And that's what makes what happened next feel so unreal. They weren't strangers to danger. Both were experienced mountaineers, respected guides in Cusco's tourism community, people trained to handle extreme situations, to read terrain, to make careful decisions where one mistake could mean everything. But in that moment there was no sense of danger at all, just 2 people caught in a quiet, intimate moment. The cameras followed as they stopped at the center of the bridge. They leaned against the railing, talking softly, lost in their own world. The city around them felt distant, almost non-existent. Then, in a playful gesture, Maybeth climbed up onto the barrier. She sat on top of it, wrapping her legs around Hector, holding on to him, laughing. It looked harmless, carefree, the kind of moment people don't think twice about. but it only takes a second. Without warning, her balance shifted. There's a sudden movement, small, almost unnoticeable at first, then panic. Her body tilts. Her grip tightens. Hector reacts instantly, trying to hold her, to pull her back, but the motion pulls him forward instead. Both of them reach for the railing, hands scrambling for something, anything, but there's nothing left to grab. And then, they're gone. In a matter of seconds, they tip over the edge together, still clinging to each other as they fall nearly 50 feet into the darkness below, disappearing from the frame as if they were never there. The silence breaks with distant screams. Emergency responders arrive quickly, but the outcome is already written. Maybeth died at the scene. Hector was still alive when help reached him, barely, suffering from devastating injuries. He was rushed to the hospital, but he didn't make it. Not long after, he was gone too. When authorities reviewed the footage, there were no hidden details, no argument, no struggle, no outside involvement. Toxicology reports came back clean. No alcohol, no drugs, just one moment, one shift in balance, one decision that couldn't be undone. Cusco felt it deeply. These weren't reckless strangers. They were known, respected, people who built their lives around understanding risk and avoiding it. Friends described them as inseparable, bound by their love for the mountains and for each other. They had faced danger together before, real danger, and survived. It was the morning of August 6, 2024 in São Paulo. A quiet, ordinary Tuesday that didn't feel any different from the countless mornings before it. For 45-year-old Adriana Maria de Jesus, everything followed a familiar rhythm. She woke up, got ready, and headed to work at the Stomer Andre apartment building, a place she knew well. It was routine, predictable, the kind of morning you move through without a second thought. Downstairs, her husband, Gildo Alves dos Santos, sat at his post as the building's concierge, watching over the entrance through a wall of security monitors. It was a job built on repetition, hours of uneventful observation, nothing ever really changing. That morning felt no different, until, suddenly, it was. Adriana stepped into the elevator on the 5th floor, calm and focused, just another part of her daily routine. A couple of floors later, the doors opened again. Two men entered, strangers, one young, the other much older. Brief glances were exchanged, nothing unusual. The doors slid shut, and Adriana pressed the button to go down. From his desk, Gildo watched the elevator feed like he always did. The cabin moved slightly upward first, a small, harmless irregularity, before beginning its descent. Nothing about it seemed dangerous. And then, without warning, everything changed. The elevator dropped. No sound to prepare them. No gradual failure. Just a sudden violent plunge, as if the floor itself had disappeared beneath them. On the monitor, Gildo saw it happen in real time. His wife's arms shot upward, instinctively reaching for something that wasn't there. The two men grabbed at the handrails, their bodies jolting as panic set in. Then came the fall, fast, uncontrolled, unstoppable. The camera shook violently as the elevator slammed into the bottom of the shaft. The screen filled with dust and debris, the image breaking apart into chaos in a matter of seconds. And then, stillness. Emergency crews rushed to the scene almost immediately. Adriana was the first to be pulled from the wreckage, alive but critically injured. The two men survived as well, though badly hurt. Adriana was taken to the hospital, where she fought for her life for days. For a week, there was hope. Then on August 13th, it was gone. She didn't survive. For Gildo, the loss wasn't just sudden, it was something he had witnessed unfold, second by second, unable to do anything to stop it. They had been childhood sweethearts once, separated for nearly 3 decades before finding their way back to each other. 6 years earlier, they had reunited, married, and started building the life they had once lost. And now, he had watched it end through a screen. "I was looking at the monitor. Everything seemed normal," he later said. "Then it came down, and I was horrified. My heart is broken." As investigators began to piece together what went wrong, a disturbing truth surfaced. The building was more than 60 years old. Its elevator system was outdated, lacking modern safety mechanisms with critical components long overdue for replacement. Reports suggested maintenance warnings had been issued and ignored. It wasn't just an accident, it was neglect. When the CCTV footage was eventually released, it sent shockwaves through the country. There was nothing dramatic about the beginning, just 3 people stepping into an elevator, expecting to reach the ground like they had countless times before. And then, in an instant, everything changed.